Daisy MacLean, welcome to the Right in the Head podcast. It's a pleasure to finally meet you. We've been back and forth on the emails for a while. How's your Sunday going?
Great, thank you.
I'm so glad that you're doing this I'm just going to mention it again. You're doing this on a Sunday. I just want to make sure our listeners know how dedicated you are to the podcast episode we're about to do. It's amazing. Um, so you and I have been talking a bit about what the subject matter for today would be, and we landed on I'm going to call it the myth of being discovered. Actually, I think that was how you phrased it in the email you sent me. Such an important topic. I'm hugely passionate about talking about this. I used to mentor some film students and teach them all the stuff about this industry that you probably don't get taught at film school. The first question I have for you is you phrased this as, was it rescuing your inner princess? Am I
Yeah,
saying that right?
rescuing your inner princess,
I
yes.
love it, and I want to know more about that. Connect those two dots for me. How is that relevant to sort of the myth of being discovered? Talk us through that.
I find that every creative, and this can apply from writing to acting to music, every creative gets to a certain point where they think someone should come along and see how talented they are and do the rest of the work for them. And and I find that that's where a lot of artists get stuck. They sit there in their tower, in their princess tower, waiting for someone to come rescue them, for a manager to come and book everything for them, for an agent to come and sell all of this work. And if you tell yourself no one's coming today, no one is coming, what would you be doing differently as an artist? What work would you push forward? Are you asking yourself every day, am I waiting for someone else to do this for me? Can I do it myself? And in that, in just doing that daily exercise, you'll find that you'll push your career far more forward than you ever thought possible. So that's does that make sense? The two there is it's you're waiting in a tower like a princess for that prince to come along. Don't do that.
It
Get
makes
yourself
perfect
out,
sense.
rescue yourself.
It
And
makes perfect sense. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And I think the reason I hadn't connected it before might be because I don't identify as a princess. But the now that you've explained it, the visual aid is very, very helpful. And so we could probably buck a few trends here and say, don't be a prince in a tower either. Why would it be a princess? Why are they always the ones that need rescuing?
Mhm.
No, it's a great reminder, and it's something that speaks to my own belief, which I've adopted over years of working in, I would broadly describe it as entrepreneurship, which is everything is your responsibility. Everything. It's so easy to blame others, to look elsewhere, but really, the moment you take full accountability, you're
Mhm.
actually empowering yourself. It doesn't feel bad. It feels good. It feels like, oh, well, if it's my responsibility, I can do something about it.
Mhm.
I'm not beholden to anybody else. It's a
No.
very empowering feeling. And I like how you've described it. Don't wait to be rescued. No one's
Mhm.
coming. No one's
Mhm.
coming. Where do you think this myth of being discovered comes from? Why do people think that that's true, especially in this industry?
Well, I mean, without getting too complex, I think it's been a pervasive thing since the Romantic period, where we made this romantic image of the starving artist who needs a patron to come along and go, oh, I love you. Come live in my estate. I'll put you up. And I think it's been a pervasive myth for the last 200 years. And I think specifically tying it to this era, we don't teach artists how to work in a creative industry. We teach kids about a business degree. You go and you start in the mailroom and you work your way up. We don't teach kids that there is a mailroom in the arts. That we look at, and especially sorry, I'm digressing, but I think specifically in the best example is Lady Gaga. Lady Gaga worked for years. She gigged for years. You can find um, videos on YouTube of her early gigs before she kind of got invested in. She started a business, she got investors, she started touring using that money and creating a business, right? Um, there's this myth very specifically in the music industry that a manager's going to sit in the audience and sign you, and we make movies about it, being like, oh yeah, but in the reality is that you have to be making a certain amount of money for it to be worth someone taking 20%, because 20% of nothing is nothing. And there's not a lot of people that's going to go, oh, I love that artist so much that I'm going to starve for months and not pay my bills for months just so I can get their career started. No, you have to. I used to tell bands back when I used to be a band manager, and I used to tell bands that the first person you need to hire is a publicist and not a manager, because again, the publicist, at least you can pay a flat fee and go, get some buzz for me, get some people at my gigs. But with a manager, they're taking 20%. With an agent, they're taking 10 to 15%. And again, you have to be at a certain level. So how do you get from wanting to start to that level where someone wants to sign you? Well, it's experience, right? It's experience, and it's people know you. They say it's who you know, but it's actually who knows you, who's willing to speak for you when you're not in the room. So so we really do have to start teaching the arts differently. I hate when I see those jokes on the internet. I know I sound like, how dare they make memes about my industry? I hate when I see jokes on the internet where they're like, "Oh, you want to be an artist, do you? What waitressing job are you going to get, or what?" We have to stop teaching kids to get waitressing jobs, because that's not how to make it in the arts. One of the things I figured out, sorry, I've got like a hair clip attached to my, I fiddle with it. It's the ADD. Um,
We will get back to the chat in just a moment. Firstly, if you're enjoying today's episode, please do go ahead and subscribe to the channel. That's a great zero-cost way of supporting the Right in the Head mission. It takes you about 2 seconds to click that button. If you want to go the extra mile, write us a comment as well. That will tickle the fancy of the YouTube algorithm, meaning this content shows up for more screenwriters just like me and you. Thank you so much. Back to the chat.
One of the things that I figured out early on is that your part-time job should be in the same industry that you want to work in. If you are getting a part-time job that is outside of the industry, that job is doing nothing for you. So, become a daily AD, see if you can do locations, see, like I work in editing. Editing is very close to writing. It's all story. It's all about the architecture of story. And I'm meeting directors, I'm meeting producers. They know me on a one-to-one basis. And if we start teaching the arts differently, we won't have that disconnect.
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel
It's
like
it's being in the same world or even the same universe as much as possible. I think there are times when having a part-time job outside of the industry can work for certain people if they're very dedicated with the time that they're not at that part-time job. So it doesn't become their life. It is literally just a part-time job, and the rest of the time they're very focused on their craft. And I think there's a lot of people that just have to make that work. But I agree with you. Ideally, they would look for ways to transition into a part-time role that is connected to the industry. It might take some time, but I think that's the goal anyway.
Scary. There's this little jump gap. This like you have to do that jump from like working in working in a secure part-time job that's maybe a little less understanding, a little difficult to balance. But once you make that leap, and it's terrifying. We've all been there, and you're like, what if I fail? But what if you don't?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. You can
and
fail at the thing you don't want to do. So why not try the thing you do want to do? Yeah.
exactly.
And something
So,
else you said that I want to get your thoughts on this. You mentioned Lady Gaga as an example. And I think this is part of the myth. It's because when somebody gets famous,
mhm,
that's when they land on our radar by definition. Before they were famous, we'd never heard of them. And
yeah.
so it always seems like it happened quite quickly. And
Hmm.
there's stories of, I think it was Mozart. Everyone says he was just a child prodigy because he could play symphonies at the age of 8 or 7. But actually, his dad was a piano teacher and he'd had lessons since he was 3. So playing every day with a father who was a teacher, it still took him 4 or 5 years. There's this myth that you either get discovered or it's a God-given talent.
Hmm.
And
That's the
I
romantic.
it's the
That
romanticism. It's the romanticism, and I think it's also people want to believe that because it excuses them for not doing it. So,
hmm.
oh, I haven't been discovered yet, or I wasn't born with it. That means I'm okay to not try.
No.
And no one wants to face up to the reality that it's hard work over a long period of time.
Hmm. It
Does
is.
that does that land with you? Has that been your experience?
Yeah, I was talking to my partner, and my partner is a production designer. And we were talking about this interview yesterday. Um, I was very lucky to be born into a creative family. My father worked in film. My mother was a costume designer for Second City. So I was very lucky to have parents who didn't panic when I said, I want to be in film. They didn't go, oh my God, we're going to be paying for you forever. Um, my father had worked in film and he was like, there's my genes. And my mother, she was like, are you ready to work hard? Because it takes some hustle. And she gave me a lot of tough love because she had been there. She had run a business. She had worked for Broadway shows. She had, worked with Martin Short and Catherine O'Hara. So she knew how hard you had to work. And she knew no one was going to hand it to me. I was very lucky. My partner came from parents who didn't work in the arts, and he had a uh, very different view until he met me on what it was to hustle in this field. And I've definitely, I think, for the positive, I've changed the way he approaches getting jobs and networking and all of that kind of behind the scenes stuff that has to happen. And he's a huge name. He's Eli Roth's guy. So
Hmm.
yeah, but it's changed his perspective. And again, it comes back to I was lucky enough to have parents who kind of knew how to navigate that field, and they taught me, and he didn't. And so I think there's a lot of people out there, because schools aren't doing it, that don't have that education in how to navigate that mailroom job and getting promoted and building that trust within the industry where people are willing to invest a couple $1 million into your idea. Because let's not lie to ourselves, that is a big risk.
Mm.
And
And
everyone
most
wants
movies
that.
lose money.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
So,
go ahead. Sorry.
no, 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 go ahead.
I was just going to say everything you're saying here, it's pointing me towards what I think is a larger issue with the way that we're going as a society, just to go real deep for a second, which is that not all of the content that we engage with now, because there's long form content like this podcast, which give you the full story, but a lot of short form content. So social media being a particular, I don't want to use the word villain here, but because social media has its upsides. But there is this growing feeling of things can happen quickly. There's this immediate gratification. And so if you're the one person on social media saying that success is built over decades of hard work and it feels like you're not making any progress, but it's compounding over a long period of time, no one's going to engage with your content because it sounds so boring. So we're kind of moving ever closer to this version of life where fame happens in 15 minutes because one of your TikTok videos goes viral, and the algorithm's very good at doing that for people even without followers now. And
Mhm,
so you get this instant hit of, oh, this is easy. But
mhm.
that's not genuine success that's not going to fulfill you, and then you're just constantly chasing that same dopamine hit that you just got from that one victory. It's very different from
Had a video go
building a
viral,
career.
terrified me because I
Sorry, say
thought
that again.
I had a video go viral, just a minor viral, where I
Viral light. Like,
viral light. I love TikTok, and I know it's definitely a bone of contention right now with the way the world is. Um, and I will let larger people than me figure that out. But for now, I find it very entertaining. And what my favorite thing about it is that people are learning to edit. People are learning how to put together stories and what catches people. And that's stuff that as a writer and as an editor, I'm very familiar with. I've been in the industry now for 15, 20 years, and I know what a hook is, and I know why it's working and why something isn't working. And I love watching people explore those things. So it makes me very happy. I did have a video go viral. It was like a one-off kind of thing I made. It was this guy. It was like his words against a video of my friends dancing in the rain. It was, I put it out there, and then I went camping, and I came back, and it was like my TikTok got flooded. And that to me, I was like, ooh, if then, because once things go viral, you're locked into doing that content. And I like to do lots of different things. And so I actually like it actually I stopped making videos for a little bit. I was like, ooh, I'll let that die down. Um I there's two people on TikTok. I'm blanking on, I want to say Chris and Selena Spooky Boo, and they are consistently viral. They're characters, right? They are building that following that actors need. And then they did make a film. So actors, and this comes back, like this probably isn't going to work as much for me, but if I wanted to be in front of the camera, um, a lot of casting now is done with social media in mind. How many Twitter followers? I have had literal discussions when we were casting early days when I was like, "Oh, can we get this guy?" They were like the little literal question to me was, "Oh, well, how many Twitter followers do they have?" And this is back before it became X. But it is how many social media followers for an actor. It's all about investment, right? And building
yeah.
that base. So that is work, building that. Again, it seems like it's instant.
Right, right.
Building
And it
that
can be if you want to buy those bot
people
followers.
want to see you in content, there's value in that.
Yeah.
If you want to be an actor.
Yeah, it's not as efficient for, or important, maybe is the right word there, for writers, producers, but yeah, for actors, it's huge. And actually, I don't mind that because you know what? To build a genuine following on social media, it's actually a hard work and it takes time. There's no easy way of doing it, as I've discovered because I work in marketing and I know lots of people that try to build a social media following, and even known brands can struggle to do that. So I'm okay with that as a mark because it doesn't for me speak to this myth of being discovered. I think people think you can get discovered on social media, but again, it's very short-lived unless you do it properly over time.
All the
Yeah.
time becomes your day job, which is
Yeah.
exhausting. I already have one.
Exhausting. And like you said, you get trapped in a certain type of content because that's what went viral and that's what the algorithm expects from you now. And if you don't, you dare disappoint the algorithm, the
Mm.
all-seeing, all-knowing algorithm. Yeah, it's like
Don't be
when I've
afraid of
when I've talked to people about this in the past, and they say, oh, you work in the entertainment industry and it takes forever to get anywhere and the odds are low. And what they're referring to is the top 1% that they see in movies and TV shows.
it.
And the response I always give to them is that's like saying that if you joined a tech company, it would take a long time to become Bill Gates.
What are you doing? What are you
Right.
doing? The time's gonna pass.
it's going to take you years to get to the top of any industry.
Hmm.
So it's not a fair comparison when they say that it takes longer. Or yes, this industry can be volatile, but what industry isn't volatile at this point in time? It's it's a tough world out there, and to build any kind of real sustainable success is going to take some time. Anyway, I want to kind of flip the conversation now and ask you this, because this is something I do give some thought to as well. This myth obviously came from somewhere, and granted, as you said, a couple of 100 years worth of painting, let's call them pretty stories for people. Is it a complete, utter myth, or does being discovered still exist for a handful of very lucky people? Because I haven't personally seen it happen to a screenwriter, but you do still hear stories. I don't know if they're well founded or not. Have you seen this actually happen to somebody where they write a first script and it gets sold and they make X number of dollars and they
Like
get
no experience.
rocketed to the top, that kind of thing?
Um, with zero experience, let's put it this way. It's the exception, not the rule. When it happens, it's not going to happen to everyone. It's going to be, like you said, it's the 1%. It's my one of my favorite I want to say it's Steve uh did the Three Amigos, Steve Martin, not Steve Martin. I he said something. It's a game of the last person standing. If you're the last person standing, they have to pick you. It's a game of not quitting. Um, but it's a good reminder for me. Let's take an example of someone I've worked with. I love Rob. He did The Witch. I know you can't see, but there's the Witch poster there, which I worked on as the assistant editor. Now, Rob was a production designer before. It was his first movie as a director and as a writer, but he was a production designer before that. And before that, his mother owns a theater company. There is the work. So, and I think that the companies that do create these first scenarios, often they'll work to bury what came before. They'll say, oh, well, take that off your IMDb, take that. So this is, you only have this one. Like you'll notice on my IMDb, it has everything I've done. And I've had agents go, oh, maybe it should only be your writing and maybe it should only be your editing. And I'm like, I don't want people to think that I came out of nowhere, that there wasn't work involved, that I didn't have to
Yeah.
earn my stripes.
Why do you think they would ask people to do that? Is it because they want to spread that message
It's
that
the
this was their
message.
first thing?
Oh, and then we discovered them, and then I created this person.
Mm,
The studio or the agent or the
right.
media too. The media really contributes to that. And I
Oh,
found that
they love an overnight success.
yes, and they will write that story. They're very, it's everything now is very click based, right? It's all about drawing people to there's a lot of competition. So I sympathize for the writer that has to write this article when they know it's not real. Um, but it does contribute. It also like these box office. I want to get away from box office reporting because we live in the days of VOD now, video on demand. Everyone wants to see it right away, and box office is a very poor estimate of how well a movie has done now because people stopped going to the theaters during the pandemic and now we're selling overseas and we're selling so like something that can look like a flop in the States can make millions and millions in China, in Europe, in India. So and we look at that domestic box office and go, no one went. But it's yeah, the way our industry is reported, I think needs a bit of an overhaul. But that's a whole other interview.
Yeah, we'll call that one part two. We'll come back in a
Yeah,
few weeks and do that one.
I don't want to get off topic.
Well, it goes back to the topic. So there's lots of reasons why this myth started and why it's pervasive and it's being spread. What do you think the impact is? Let's take it back to actual screenwriters. And I think particularly younger screenwriters, maybe, or let's not say younger, let's say people who are new to screenwriting, because you can start any age. What do you think is the impact that this myth of being discovered is having on their approach to taking on this role as a screenwriter and honing their craft?
That's a tough question
I have
because
to ask a few of them, Daisy.
people come to writing in various ways, right? There's the people that love that fan fiction kind of stuff, and they come up through writing like copious amounts of fan fiction, and they learn the craft through that. Um, and then, even Stephen King wrote fan fiction, and that went somewhere. Uh, I know you have to read a lot. You have to read as much as you write. You know, read at least 2, 3 scripts a week. If you want to be a screenwriter, read the scripts. Don't just watch the movies, but then look at how those scripts got made. Learn that critical eye. Learn to have a critical eye and see how much of what was on paper. Arrival's one of my favorite scripts, great script. And comparing the movie and what ended up on screen, because it's so hard to write for a visual medium. It's much easier to write a novel where you get to describe everything, but in screenwriting you can't direct on paper. You can't, and you've got to kind of trust that you've articulated it enough that that's gonna translate onto the screen. And a lot of times your favorite line will be terrible when you see it. You're like, oh, that's so overwritten. We have to cut that out. Oh God. But for starting, obviously, it's the tried and true. I mean, just write as much as you can. It's like learning to ride a bicycle. You have to practice, or playing an instrument. You have to practice. You read as much as you can. Oh, there's this great book. I've just rearranged my living room, so I don't know where the book is, but there's a really great book that's on the market. It's called Writing for Profit. And it actually it's writing for fun and profit, but fun is crossed out. And it's a great, if you want to know how writing for the screen industry works, I would say that book is the most accurate book I've ever seen on the process of writing. And it really covers a lot of different sections. Notes is a big thing I actually was at lunch yesterday with a writer friend, and we were talking about notes, and specifically for Hallmark. Hallmark has a very specific formula that they know their audience very, very well, and they know what their audience is coming to them to watch. And it seems like an easy. A lot of writers think, oh, well, I'll just start with a Hallmark script, but it's actually very complex to create the movies because the formula is so specific. And she was talking about how far she got. She got very far with a Hallmark script. And then they had one more change, and it seemed to break everything. The production company just kind of threw up their hands, and unfortunately her script fell apart. And it wasn't that it was good, it just didn't fit Hallmark. And getting through those notes sessions and being able to interpret the notes is one of the tricky things that you have to learn. And you can't learn it without doing it. And so again, it's practice, rewrites. Really get comfortable with rewrites, because there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen with film. It's not a novel. People aren't coming over and going, that's perfect, let's film it.
Right.
Everyone wants their say.
Yeah, people feel obligated to contribute in some way.
And
So,
that's where the work is, right? You come up, you
yeah.
get so excited about the idea and you write the first script, and you're like, this is it. This is great. This is fantastic. But yeah, to get it to the point, sorry. There's something in my eye. To get it to a point where it's filmed, that's a whole process.
And you
Um,
think this myth of being discovered is maybe
sorry to ah,
take a beat. We're all good.
okay, thanks.
So the myth of being discovered, then, I think what you're saying here, correct me if I'm wrong, it kind of takes you away from the truth, which is that writing is rewriting. You'll get notes. You'll get told to redo. It's not just this is great. Let's go make a movie. And so if you kind of come into this industry with the belief that it might happen that way, you're in for a rude awakening.
Yeah, I mean, I met a writer. For me, I like to see my stories made. It is possible to survive on option fees. I met a writer at Cannes who had never had a movie made, but he had so many scripts optioned that he was piecing together through those option fees uh, a livelihood. Um, that to me, that's not what I want to do. I want to make things. I want to make, you know, the next the next Game of Thrones, the next Lord of the Rings. I want to, I want to see them come to life. Am I answering your question properly? Sorry, I'm so distracted by this.
I
Let's
think
start
we
again.
are. I think
Repeat
we
the
are. I think we're
question.
teasing it apart. Yeah, I think we are. I think if I could retake the question, it would
Yes.
be so I think what I'm hearing you saying here is that if we come into this industry with this myth of being discovered, there'll be a few quite nasty surprises because there's things like notes that we'll get and adjustments we'll have to make. And for me, it's things like you need to go to networking events. You need to go to 100 and not meet anybody that's going to advance your career just for the one time you do meet the right person. There's a lot of work that's not even to do with writing per se. It's building a whole life around this thing. And if you come at this with this myth that you can write a script and be discovered, yes, it could happen. It's a million to one.
Mhm.
And most of the time it's those people that quit because they came in with false expectations.
Yeah.
That was a whole bunch of my words, not yours.
No, it's
I
okay.
started out summarizing what you said and then I just went on a rant of my own, but
No, it's
I think we're on the
fantastic.
same page.
I think we are. I think that one of my favorite lines from a show was, and I'm going to warp it to suit our needs, which is, you have a better chance of being struck by lightning while writing your screenplay than getting discovered if you have no other background. You need that experience. You need to that networking. You need to get out of your ego. We all have them. It's nothing to be ashamed of, but don't let it block you from learning and listening to what people are telling you. Um,
Have you had a personal moment of revelation with this? Did you buy into the myth at any point in your life and then realize it, or were you very savvy
oh,
from the
oh,
word go?
no, when I was I did a lot of classical singing when I was younger. And and then I took a break from the arts. Singing's a very jealous mistress. It's the only thing you can do. If you do music, it's the only thing. You have no social life. You have nothing. It's just music all the time. Um, I took a break from the arts and then I made the conscious decision to go into film. And I knew because I'd already worked in film as an actress, not a big actress. Just want to clarify, like bit parts, tiny background stuff, like nothing. Um, I knew that film, even when it was 22-hour days, when you're working in the rain and the mud and you hate everyone you're working with, for me, that was still better than working in retail. So I made the conscious decision to go and study film, not because I couldn't go into the industry without a degree, because you can, absolutely. There's no one way into this industry. there's many, many ways, and it's up to you to build your road. But I went to Ryerson, which has now been renamed the Toronto Metropolitan University. It's one of the third best film programs in the world. I was really shocked that I got in. And I got in, and I was with all these 17-year-olds who were doing university for the first time. This was my second degree. And there was a professor there, she's still there, who's point blank said to me, if you want to be in film, just go work in film. I said, yeah, but I want to be good. And that was the difference for me, to really learn and be humble and open my ears and listen to what people who, one of the things I think that Timu's Image Arts film program is so successful is because they have people who actually work in the industry teaching. And listening to what they say and maybe swallowing a bit of my pride and, and showing up ready to do what was necessary to succeed. And, it's been 15 years. It took me, let's say, Christmas Land came out 7 years ago. So it took me a solid 7 years before I did get that, where a producer trusted me enough to take a chance on me. And
well, I want to kind of double click on that, and maybe you're about to tell this part of the story anyway, but I want to know your actual journey, because there's no better way of saying to people, probably forget about being discovered. This is what it actually looks like. So you, Daisy MacLean, successful screenwriter, projects that have been produced, they are now movies that people can go and watch. How does that happen? Talk us through it, the timeline, the steps. Go as detailed as you want, because I really want people to hear what the journey actually looks like.
Okay. Well, like I said, working in editing is just as much about story as writing. And it gave me the opportunity to work with the producers and with the directors, and work with, I graduated right after the 2008 collapse. No one was hiring. It was a struggle. And I got my foot in the door with a company called Chesler and Perlmutter. And they hired me to work overnight. So from like 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. or 9 a.m. Transcoding footage. And that was a brutal timeline, but it was my foot in the door, and I was very grateful. And slowly over time, they trained me to be an assistant editor and then a first assistant editor. So I kind of worked my way up within that company. And, just to say, it's still freelance. I was working contract to contract. So I don't want people to think that company just paid me full time. When they had work for me, they gave me a contract for said movie. I think I did about 12 Christmas movies with them. And by then I knew how to do Christmas movies. I knew the formula that they were working to. And I want to emphasize that my story, I think it's a little bit of an exception. I don't think it's easily repeatable, but if you can, great, more power to you. It was 7 a.m. I was getting a coffee, and I came up with an idea. And I wrote the producer, because by then I'd been working there 3 years. By then he knew me, and it wasn't an overstep to approach him, because you do have to be careful with that. I wrote him an email and I said, hey, I've got a great idea for your next film. And I was literally just giving him the idea. I didn't care. I was like, here's the idea. I wrote a paragraph. I said, this is what you should do. You haven't done it. I've been with you for 3 years and you haven't done this story yet. And he wrote back and he said, do you know how to write a one-page? And I was like, well, I haven't written one since university, but I'll give it a shot.
I'll give it a try. Why not?
And so I called my friend Robin. He's my co-writer on the film. I called him and I was like, hey, I've got this opportunity. Do you want to be, because I know he wanted to also write. So I was like, do you want this opportunity with me? Do you want to write this with me? And he was like, all right. When opportunity knocks, you don't question why, you just jump. And so we wrote the one page and we handed it in. We took about a week to write the one page, which was, in essence, a fake plot that we had not thought through. We just wrote out what we thought were going to be, and we made it sound as nice as possible, and then
Yeah.
like handed it in.
Right.
Which is like the opposite of what you should do as a writer. Um, but again, when opportunity knocks, you don't look at don't look the gift horse in the mouth. Um, and we didn't hear anything. About 2 weeks went by, and I get a phone call, and they're like, right, so we sold the movie to Hallmark. Do you have a script? And I was like, well, no, you just had me write a one page. It's been 3 weeks. I don't have a script. And he said, great, okay, get me a script by Monday. And so I had a premiere to go to, and then I was back Friday, and Robin and I wrote without sleeping through the weekend, and we handed in the script at 4 a.m. on the Monday. I emailed it to them. Now, I am not going to say that this was the best script in the world, but they gave us, obviously, we went through the revisions process where it was made into something. But it wasn't my writing that got me there. I mean, yes, my writing is good. The movie did very well. I think 4.25 million people watched it, and I'm very grateful for that.
Oh,
But it
congratulations.
was the fact that someone knew that I wasn't a risk. It was worth investing in me because I had done the hours.
Mm. You knew the format. You'd been with the company 3 years. You had existing relationships. It was a low risk opportunity to explore. And look, they could have eventually said no at any point, but it was a low risk for them to just give it a chance.
To give me a chance.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm very grateful to this day for Chesler and Perlmutter giving me that chance to write a
Yeah.
Hallmark film, and and
And
it did really well.
how have things changed since then? Because I'm a big believer that going from 0 to 1 in any industry is the hardest step, because then at least you've got something that you can say, I did this thing here, so going from one to the next should theoretically not be easy. I don't think anything in life is easy, but maybe easier, because at least you have proof at this point. Has that been the case for you?
No, partly because of myself, I think. The next thing I tried to sell was something very different. I tried to sell a TV show that I loved. We got very far with it. It's a fantastic show. It's called DNR. And we got very far with a company called Muse, who really loved it, but their American partners felt it was too dark. And so we got almost there. It is easier. It does get you in the door, but it's definitely there's more to the whole working for a company and knowing people. I think that is, so I went through a few, let's call them lemons. I love them. I love them dearly. Maybe they will get made one day, but I did write a few lemons where people were like, it's too complex, it's too expensive, it's too this, that, the other. But because I do have that credit, I do tend to get approached by people who want me to go over scripts or like do a rewrite, or so it's more that kind of stuff where they're like, oh, you know how to do that. With the Hallmark, just gonna wait while I don't know if that's coming through the fire truck.
Well, I don't know if the fire truck was, but your voice started to sound different. I guess that's Zoom trying to block out the fire truck.
Probably.
Yeah.
Uh, I did get approached by younger writers who were like, you know how to write Hallmarks. How can I write a Hallmark? I got a lot of that.
Yeah.
Um, and it
Yeah.
was definitely an experience, especially that notes pass, where you kind of, you know, there is sometimes clarity is lost for the sake of politeness.
Mm.
There's a lot of in this industry, and I'm not going to call out Hallmark because they were lovely. They were absolutely gems to work with. But in this industry, sometimes we get too nervous about offending a large, larger person, a more famous person, a more, and we lose clarity in our notes. We're too polite. Things get very generic, and you're like, what are they trying to say?
Yeah. It's like decoding the message, isn't it?
Exactly. We're like trying to read between the lines of like, what
Hmm.
did they specifically hate about this
Yeah.
scene? Or like,
Yeah.
I remember I got this note and it really took us a long time to figure out what they meant. And it was because we were new, because we didn't have the experience of writing. And I think a more experienced writer will hear this note and go, oh, of course. But try to keep Christmas as a character was the note. And we were like, what does that mean? What it means, and I know this now, Christmas has to be so much a part of the movie that taking it out will ruin the plot.
That's
It can't
interesting.
be Die Hard, where it's a movie that's set at Christmas.
Right.
Gremlins, movie set at Christmas. It
Right.
has to be Christmas Story. That is a movie that where Christmas is so much a part of the plot that removing, putting it in another season, it won't make sense. That's what
Right.
they meant by Christmas as a character. But that
It's a
was
great note.
really hard as a first-time writer. That note was just cryptic to us. I had to call the producer and get him to explain it to me because I was like, I don't know what this means.
I wouldn't have known what that meant either.
Mm-hmm.
No, your explanation made perfect sense, but just the note itself, I would not know
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
that meant.
Yeah. And again, that's where that experience kind of kicks in, right? And the more you are getting notes, interpreting those notes, and in politely accepting notes without, being like, no, it's my movie and it has to go this way. Do a shot of Jack Daniels, as they say, and say thank you. That's a great insight.
Feedback is a gift. Is This is one that I like from a mentor of mine back in the day. Feedback is a gift, and as with any gift, you can choose to use it or just throw it in the closet and ignore it, but you always say thank you.
Exactly. That's perfect.
Yeah, I
That's
love that one. Yeah, credit to Kassam Jaffa, I believe his name was. He will never listen to this podcast because he's in business, not screenwriting, but
you
really
never know.
good, really smart business headed man who taught me that. Stuck with me. So I want to start bringing this one home. We're just about running on the hour here. Let's end on a positive because we've said a lot about you probably won't get discovered. It's going to take some hard work. There's going to be setbacks. I think a lot of people are okay with that.
Mhm.
I also want to point out that Hollywood, maybe I'm naive, but Hollywood for me, let's not say Hollywood, let's say the entertainment industry, it does still have that allure of magic can happen.
Mhm.
And I
Mhm.
don't want to take that away from anybody listening to this. So, where are you? How do you remind yourself of why you got into this industry and that magical element? Because it is still there, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Um, I love going to panels and listening to other people's stories and the excitement. I'm starting a company, a production company with my partner, and part of the reason we're starting that company is because I want that excitement again, that magic again. I want to be excited to work with my friends, to be excited about ideas. I don't want this to feel um, I mean, it's a labor of love, but I want the emphasis to be on the love and not on the labor.
Hmm. I
Um,
like that. That's a good phrase. I'm stealing that
I
one.
love learning about, like, I love watching behind the scenes stuff and learning how, especially because you can tell when people enjoyed making something and when they didn't.
Yeah.
And
Watch the
it's
bloopers. Just watch the bloopers. It will get you every time. You
so
can't watch them without smiling.
I mean, I've been very lucky over the last 5 years. I've worked with a company called Take Five. They are a fantastic post house. I've worked on Valhalla and Halo, and those were just, I was just sitting there being like, my dad would have loved this. I'm working in sci-fi. We're doing all these crazy VFX. And Valhalla was amazing. It was all historical. I actually used the Latin that I studied in school, which was wild.
Who
Um,
knew? Who knew that would be where Latin got used?
it's definitely unexpected. But it's just I've been very lucky over the last couple years. And then there's another show coming out that I worked on for Apple TV, which was just I had so much fun working on this show. But yeah, it's the behind the scenes. It's just trying to like remember your inner child and like how you felt at 16 and where you are now, and just take a moment and stop and go, gosh, I've come so far. Um,
Yeah,
and I'm
I love
having so
that.
much
I
fun.
love that. Those are some great ways to reconnect with the magic. And I'm similar. If I see any behind the scenes footage where you see actors just breaking character and having fun on set, that's one of the things that really tugs at the heartstrings. It's just like, yes, that's the feeling. Because, I mean, maybe that's specific to me because I used to be on screen a lot. I was an actor before I was a writer. And I remember those days of being on set with the buzz and the hum of the crew working and the lights, and it's a magical place for me, always has been.
Going to set, I love it. Not a lot of editors like going to set. They're a shy bunch,
Yeah,
but I do. I
yeah,
love it. I love, yeah, just all of that. And panels, like I said, panels,
yeah,
they're great for
yeah.
networking, but they're also great to reignite that spark of like, oh, and then we had this moment. My favorite story was with Wendy. She was the editor of Handmaid's Tale. She edited the pilot, and she told this story of how originally it was just supposed to start like the book with her in the bathroom. And they decided at some point to start with the flashback. And that changed the tone of the whole episode. And it's these little eureka moments that I love being a part of or learning about. And that's where the magic is.
Yeah. I love it. I think that's a great place to bring this one into land, as they say. Where can people go if they want to know more about you or follow the work that you're doing? Any websites we can send people to, social handles, anything at all?
I'm in the middle of redeveloping my website, so you'll find that there's a few dead links there, but not to fear, where it will be running shortly. But Daisy in Pictures is my Instagram handle. That's probably the easiest one to follow me. I'm also on Blue Sky as well. So you can find me there.
Daisy, I really appreciate you taking this time. I'll say it one more time. It's a Sunday. We should all be resting today, just to express my gratitude. And I hope we can connect again soon. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for watching this episode of the Right in the Head podcast. If you enjoyed the episode, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. You know you want to. It's a great zero-cost way to support the mission we are on here at Right in the Head to share wellness information with the screenwriting community. If you want to go ahead and leave us a comment as well, it will please the YouTube algorithm. Therefore, this content will get shown to more screenwriters around the world. Finally, go ahead and click on the videos being suggested up here, maybe down here, depends on the end plate, and we will see you there. Wow, this is awkward.